Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, based on your time zone. Today, we're going to talk about what is the code review in Salesforce and how to maintain the code quality. Before getting started, let me introduce myself. My name is Amit Chaudhary. I'm the Salesforce Technical Architect and the Salesforce MVP, and I'm also the founder of the Epics Hour. You can follow me on the Twitter and LinkedIn. And let's see what is the agenda of the today session. We will talk about what is the code review and why we need it, and we'll see how the basic code review happened and how we can set the standard to perform the expert level code review. We will also talk about couple of best practices with example and how to maintain the code quality. Let's start and see what is the code review. Is the code review. A developer is writing the code and the whole team is looking into the screen to find the issue. Not exactly. So code review is a software quality assurance process. It can be manually by a team or by using automated code review tool. The motive of code review is to find the bug, resolve the error, and improve the code quality. To make sure the new feature is developed within the company high quality standards. And the code review is an essential process that every software company must follow. So let's see why we need it. So let's start it with the first point, the best practices and the consistency. The main point is like we should document the company best practices, naming convention, and make sure all the developers are following the same standard across the project, across the different teams and different developers. And the second thing is code review is really helpful to reduce the technical debt. Most of the companies spend 40 to 80% of time into the maintenance of the code, and that help you to reduce the buzz factor. Now let's say what is the buzz factor. Take an example, your developer is doing some code from a long time and he have a grip of a particular area, but think about if he move from the team and then if or he left your organization. In that particular scenario you have a dependency, but if somebody is doing the peer code review, then it also reduce the dependency from that team member. If he's on a holiday or he left the organization, someone can take over that particular part, and this allow for the discussion. So there is a very good opportunity for everyone to discuss about the better solution. Can it be done out of the box, or we really need a code? So when you somebody do the peer code review, you always have a good opportunity for a better solution, and it improve the maintainability. What that means, so in that particular way, if your organization have some reusable code, reusable asset, then the same code can be reused, and this can be guided at the part of the code review process, and you can make a repeatable reusable asset which can be used across the team and execute other on the new code. So take an example, if somebody some new team member onboarded, so that will be help to guide them the company standards, coding styles and everything. Or take an example, you are already using some trigger framework, you can pass it to the new team member, so make sure they will be follow the same standard. Now talk about when we are talking about the code review process, what exactly come in your mind when if I will say you need to review the code. The first thing the coming into the mind is, I'm able to understand the code. Is the code is too big? DML SQL inside the for loop. Code coverage is 75%. Code formatting and naming conventions are good. And is code following the standard guideline? Is there is any duplicate code? This is what few things come into our mind when we are talking about the code review. But think about it. This is what all is a code review? Not exactly. So when you are doing the code review, you should set the standard. You should know the process in the mind, and the developer should know that in advance. So set the goal and the standard, like what you want to do and what is the outcome you want to generate from the code review, and communicate the goal and expectation from to the team, and saying that what you are looking for, so that it will not happen. Your developer will be submit the code on the last day of the sprint, and they will be in hurry to get it approved and move into the QA sandbox. If developer know very well, like they have a time to submit the code, and they will be get some feedback, they need to fix it, and then only the code will be get merged into the QA sandbox or whatever the pipeline you have. In that particular way, to save this kind of back and forth between a developer and the review process, it's always better way to set the code review checklist and document all this company standard for the developer, so that any team member will be onboarded into the team, he know what exactly code reviewer is looking for. So that will be save couple of iteration into the code review. And make sure never spend more than 60 minutes into one commit code review check. Try to use automation tool like Apex PMD if possible to save your time. Don't do the same thing which tool can do, and try to save with automation tool, automation code review tool like Apex PMD or SonarQube or any other particular tool available in the market. So that is what the standard should be documented, process should be documented, and we expectation should be set what we are looking for. So once it is done, then the advanced level code review gets started. Once a advanced level, a senior person look into the code, that everything very first thing should be come into the mind is the code is following the defined architecture. Like if you are using any particular trigger framework, the company, all the developer are using the same thing. You are using Apex enterprise pattern, selector pattern, services pattern, is that should be taken care, and everyone follow the same thing. And the having the good code is not only meeting the functional requirement, make sure your code is also meeting the non-functional requirement. Is like security is taken care. What about if your one SQL is working today and it will be work after 1 year? Once you have a millions of data, make sure your query is selective and you are taking care of the query is taking care of the last data volume. And make sure you are following the Apex best practices, governor limit, cross-site scripting, SQL injection. So this make sure like your code is secure. And definitely once you'll come to the Apex, it should be follow the object oriented design pattern like solid, dry principle, separation of concern, dependency injection. And don't forget to use about the static code analysis like Apex PMD, because that will be evaluate your code which you will be spent by the manual time. I will always say try to use the tool and save your time as much as you can do it. So Apex PMD is a free tool, go ahead and use that. So let's see code review best practices. So very first point, what the code is doing. So when you are doing the code review, make sure you have the right background of the information, like what this code is doing, what the acceptance criteria is written for that particular story, and what is the expectation. Don't directly look into the code and figure it out the problem into that. If possible, try to see the read the requirement, read the acceptance criteria from the Jira ticket or anywhere, and then try to see this is the right solution for it. The code is really required or it can be done by out of the box. So read about it, get the good understanding of the requirement and acceptance criteria, then start the code review. The next thing is that once you have a good understanding of the requirement, then inspect the code, then follow it. The naming convention is followed properly. Does the code follow dry principle? Error handling is there, last data volume is taken care, code is written in the similar style which other team member are following, and they are following all the standard which we discussed few minutes before. And then frame your mind how experienced you are with the code based language, how frequently, how strong grip you have into the existing code, you know about the existing utilities, existing reusable code, and you are aware about the data model. And then think about what this code will be do into the future, is that can be reusable. Think about it and then frame your mind, if that can be reused into the future, make some utility classes, reusable classes, and use the separation of concern. So make sure the code can be reused and code is written into bulkified manner, so that today you might be you are using for one record, but make it dynamic so that it can be used for other thing as well. And the most important part is the feedback. When you are doing the code review and adding the code review comment, make sure you should be respectful. Frame your feedback as a request, not the command. Be respectful and descriptive, and try to provide, when you are doing the code review, try to provide examples so that developer can understand what you're talking about. If you explain with the proper explanation and with descriptive and example, it will be really easy for the developer to be get it fixed. And be open for the follow-up. Don't be get arrogant and stick like this is what I want and this should be follow. Be open for that discussion. There might be possibility the other developer have a different perspective to get it resolved. So something conflict, set up a call, discuss into the open form, and find it out the best solution. And might be over the time some new approaches will be get added into your documentation. Now talk about the code quality. Tips for the code quality. Take an example. This is the code example I have. If you see that I have a one trigger handle method which contain lots of code, and I know it might be not visible, but let's see how we can improve this code with the good quality of code. So better way is that keep your method short, and function should do one thing. They should do it well. They should do it only. So if you see my code example from the previous slide, I try to break it down into the multiple method. So if you see that I break it down into the three method: add error, handle audit field changes, and set category. I put it all these things separate, and then I further break this method into the another one. Like if you see that audit text change, I put it separately and keep it separate. But don't think like there is only one way to do the best thing. If you see the last code, I improve it into breaking down into the 3 or 4 method, but there always a scope of improvement. So that is what I say, open for the discussion. There might be possibility I still have some issue in this code. So let me show you what is the issue still there in this code. So I break down that method into the 4 method, but still if you see in this method I still added for loop 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. So there is other better way to do it is like break it down the single for loop and use the multiple method from inside it. So now I break it down. So there is always a different method. So that is what I say, always open for the discussion. So there might be possibility you are thinking to the one direction, but another developer will be come into with the another approach. So there is always different way of writing the code into the different fashion, and be open for the suggestion. All the things are good way, but try to find the best optimized way to handle it. Now let me move to the next point. Don't repeat yourself. So if you see the same example, so here I was calling that if you are having the same code and you are using the same code into update and insert, and previously I was using the same piece of code multiple times. So instead of that, create a reusable method or service method or handler method and reuse that. So don't repeat yourself. Put it whatever the code is repeated, try to put into this method and try to reuse it. And when we are talking about, I'm not going to talk too much into detail about all the standard. I will be share the link of all the best practices into the description of this video so that you can follow. I have really great blog posts on Apex our website on this. I will be share it, but let me talk about a few of them in a short manner. So naming convention, noun of the classes, and follow class name should be capital, and verbs for the method name make it small and follow this pattern, and use the name as a relevant. So sometime you see people added opportunity close date at D. Don't do that. Try to make the variable as a readable format like opty close date, so it can be easily pronounced. So that is much better way. Instead of integer dtc, it will be better to integer day till close. So make the name useful and follow the standard what your company defined. So it can be different. And the best scout rule is that leave the campaign cleaner than you found. So there might be possibility if you are working on a code and if you found the existing code which is not written properly, try to follow the best practice, fix it out and follow the scout rule. Clean it if you can do it. Sometime I know if you are working in the big organization and you have a big line of code and legacy code is really hard, but if you find something which you can think which is written by some other developer, don't say this is existing code or not. If it's possible you can fix it, fix it. That is the main rule. And what the process I follow when I'm writing the code? Don't write the code. That is the best practice into the Salesforce if you are writing the code. Think before writing the code. Don't write the code and jump into the code exactly. First of all, try to see it can be achieved by out of the box. If not, you need to write the code. Try to think about existing utility code is available which you can use it. Try to think about the edge cases, all the scenario, and then write a code. Then get it work. Once it is work, it doesn't mean your code is perfect. After done, try to refactor it and clean it if it's possible. If you added it unnecessarily commented code, try to remove it, follow fix indentation, follow the best practices, clean the method, you break it down the method as possible as you can do it. And once everything look good, that is the right time for you to commit the code. Let's see, you are not done when it's work, you are done when it's clean. So make sure when you are writing the code, the perspective should be not make it working code, perspective should be make write the clean code.